Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to session 1 of the conference. And I would just like to extend my thank yous also to Professor Dunn and his team at CARMAC for another year of this conference. As session chair, I'm just going to be directing traffic up here to take you through some presentations from the panelists. And the guidelines are simple. I'm going to go through the bios of each panelist before we start the presentations. And we're going to actually be taking questions after all the panelists have presented. So make a note of your questions, but we won't be taking questions until the end, all right? We're going to try to manage the time very tightly because we want to stay on time. We're after a little bit of a late start. So with that being said, I'm going to just run through the panelists for you, the bios of the panelists for you quickly. I'm going to have to read one from my cell phone, so forgive me. With the poor eyesight and the small text, I might be going a little slowly on that one. So I'm going to start with one of our visitors from Canada, Professor Dr. En-Hui, and he's a keynote presenter for this panel. And he has been with the Department of Electrical Computer Engineering at the University of Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, since June 1997. And he's now a professor and Canada Research Chair in Information and Theory Applications. He is the founding director of Leeds University of Waterloo Multimedia Communications Lab, a co-founder of Slipstream Data Inc., now a subsidiary of BlackBerry, and the founder of BicDroid, Incorporated. He served among many other roles as a review panel member of the International Council for Science and evaluator for the 2017 Japanese Prize, which is second only to the Nobel Prize in terms of prestige and monetary value. He is also an associate editor for IEEE Transactions on Information Theory, a general co-chair for 2008 IEEE International Symposium on Information Theory, the largest premier international conference on information theory in the world, a technical program vice chair of the 2006 IEEE International Conference on Multimedia and Expo, the chair of the awarding committee for the 2004 Canadian Award in telecommunications, a co-editor of the 2004 special issue of the IEEE Transactions and Information Theory, a co-chair of the 2003 U.S. National Science Foundation workshop on the interface of information theory and computer science, the purpose of which is to advise the NSF about research directions and support the interface era. And he's also the co-chair of the 2003 Canadian workshop on information theory. Dr. Yang is a fellow of the IEEE, a fellow of the Canadian Academy of Engineering, a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada. He is also a recipient of several awards and honors, a partial list of which includes the prestigious inaugural Ontario's Premier's Catalyst Award in 2007 for the Innovator of the Year. Proceeds of the awards were donated entirely to the University of Waterloo to create an annual En-Hui Yang Engineering Research Innovation Award eligible to all engineering faculty at Waterloo to encourage and support research and innovation. The 2007 earned the C Manning Award distinction, one of Canada's most prestigious innovation prizes. The 2013 CPAC Professional Achievement Award, 2014 IEEE Information Theory Society Padovani Lecture, and the 2014 FCC P Education Foundation Award of Merit. Products based on his early inventions and commercialized by his previous company, Slipstream, received the theory, information security, multimedia compression, digital communications, and big data analytics. His research has benefited people in over 170 countries through commercialized products, video coding open sources, video coding standards. In 2011, he was selected for the inclusion in Canada's Who's Who. A round of applause for Dr. Yang. All right. Also on the panel is Mrs. Sandie King-James. Much shorter bio. She's the Information Security Manager at National Commercial Bank with responsibilities for information security and risk management. She has been working at National Commercial Bank for approximately 11 years. Her portfolio includes security policies, standards and procedures, security architecture, security monitoring and incident response, vulnerability management, security awareness, security assessments and testing, and of course PCI compliance, among many other things. She's also a graduate at the University of West Indies. Did her postgraduate degree here, and some of her certifications include Certified Information Security Manager, Certified Information Systems Auditor, Certified in Governance of Enterprise and IT, and a GIAC Certified Forensic Examiner. A round of applause to Mrs. King-James. And we also have on our panel Inspector Warren Williams, a frequent presenter at this conference. He heads the communication department in the Communication Forensics and Cybercrime Division of the Counterterrorism and Organized Crime Investigation Branch of the JCF. He's a trained radio frequency propagation specialist and manager of terrorism investigations, and also cybersecurity. Mr. Williams holds various international certifications in digital forensics, and he has over 15 years' experience in telecommunications management and engineering. He's classified by the Jamaica Post and Telegraph as a Class A radio engineer. Mr. Williams has attended several digital and cyber conferences and workshops as a trainer and presenter in the Caribbean, North, Central, and South America, and also in Europe. Mr. Williams has done studies in telecommunications engineering and management in the USA at the undergrad level, and he has pursued studies at master's levels in telecoms, policy, and technology management at the Mona ICT and Policy Center. Mr. Williams is also a Minister of Religion and a marriage officer. Welcome, Mr. Williams. A round of applause. And last, but by no means least, Mr. Ordon Tucker. He was added to the panel just this morning. He's Director of Information Technology, Financial Investigations Division at Ministry of Finance and Planning. He holds an MSc in Telecommunications Policy Management, and he has 15 years experience in cyber investigation and education. So at this time, I'm going to invite Dr. En-Hui Yang to come and do the first presentation, and the others will follow with their presentations, after which we will take some questions. All right? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This time is real. Good morning, everyone. So welcome to the first technical session. Early in our opening ceremony, all speakers have touched the importance of cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is not the one man's job, right? It needs collective effort from all parties in the society. So I come from University of Waterloo to share with you our technical research into cybersecurity solution. So we contribute from only technical perspective, okay? So here's simple outline for my talk. At the end, I hope I have time to show you some technical the live demo. Okay. We talk about cyberspace challenge. Then we talk about our strategies, technical strategies, and how can make it happen. So through our core technologies. If I have time, I will present post-quantum secure key management, so which is one of the key components to solve some of challenging problems in cybersecurity. Then we'll look at the what we have in my company, so product offering. At the end, show the demo. Okay. Oh, it's too fast. Now, if you fast backward to 2000, okay, at that time, you people asked me, what was the challenge in the internet-based economy at that time? At that time, I would say it's the bandwidth, because internet-based economy just started, right? All home, again, most home, okay, in North America, same thing in the rest of the world, right? You tie in the internet through what? Through the wireline, right? It's phone line. The speed is really low. So at that time, bandwidth is really big problem, okay? But now you fast forward today, the bandwidth is not issue anymore, okay? Of course, people still talk about 5G, okay? That probably will be released very soon, but speed is not a big challenge anymore. The challenge, I think, is now the security, still security, okay? I started my early company in 2000 to address the first challenge, the bandwidth, because we applied some compression algorithm, invented some compression algorithm, applied them to speed up internet connection. Now I start second one to address the cybersecurity. So let's look at the numbers, right? They're really staggering, okay? So we know this one. I think we know this. WannaCry, right? On May 12. So they were attacked more than 150 countries. Actually, that tool may be leaked from NSA. So NSA, I think the week before last week, there was article in New York Times. Okay, NSA has been hacked. Now NSA doesn't know it's coming from inside or coming from outside, or combination, right? As a result, the morale of NSA employee went down dramatically because everyone is suspicious. Okay, it's pretty bad, right? Then we also this Equifax, right? The company was supposed to protect data of consumers. Okay, now you talk. I think the last week this Whooper, right? In North America, is really popular. Whooper, the same thing. Whooper paid $100,000 to keep the attack silent. So don't disclose, don't mention Whooper has been even hacked. Okay. Now look at Yahoo, right? This is the pioneer of internet, based economy company. Every user, after acquired by the Verizon, right? Now it's claimed that every Yahoo user has been hacked, has leaked data of every user Yahoo's company has been leaked. Okay. So look at these numbers, okay, and this number is growing, right? And also that 90% large organization, okay, and more than 70% small organization have been hacked in the past year. Okay. Now, if we don't have a really good solution in place, no one is immune. It doesn't matter whether you are country, government, military, or large organization like a Yahoo, right? Even like a Google, okay, or to the individual. Right? You don't have this big problem. Actually, there is a website to track large attack or data breach. Okay, you can search many companies out there. Okay, military, government, banks, health, right? Organization, all there. Okay. So I think, as I mentioned before, right? Once you become victim, the consequences are really huge. Okay. So I think I mentioned before that the global criminal economy, according to a Europol survey, is estimated to 6 trillion by 2021. Okay. Now, so if you look at this, I assume all of you still remember Sony's data breach, right? That incident alone cost Sony around between $1 to $2 billion. Okay. Now you look at the recent one in September, Equifax. Now people estimate that loss will be around 70 billions, more than I think the whole value of the whole company. Okay, so once you, because the repercussion of successful tech organization is huge. Okay, so the problem is so challenging, right? Then you should expect, right? All the society, different organizations spend so much money into this. What's the reality? Okay, but you look at all the solutions on the market. The reality is pretty frustrating. Okay, we can talk about different policy, we can talk about training. Well, that does not solve the problem completely. Okay, so on this slide, on your right side, I plot. You see, plot network, system, and data. Okay, on the left, I classified traditional as old generation cybersecurity solution. I call old generation cybersecurity solution into 4 categories. Number 1, as a first line defense, right? You normally apply firewall, so which will monitor incoming, outgoing data traffic. Okay, we know that one does not work all the time. Okay, that one is similar to the my background. So I came from China initially. China built this Great Wall, right? What is war? So we built the Great Wall, more than 5,000 years ago, right? It didn't work, okay? The same thing here. So people can break in your wall, get in the system. What do you do next? Well, you invoke the second line defense. So that's you apply technique so-called intrusion detection and prevention. Well, at that time, virus or mail are already in your system, your network. What do? You try to detect. The early, the better. At that time, you assume that certain damage may have occurred. Okay, the earlier you detect, you try to minimize the damage. Okay, so then you invoke the third line defense. You apply forensic techniques, right, to see which part has been damaged. Okay, and try to do damage control, assess damage. Okay, so all this may not work sometimes. What do you do? As I mentioned earlier, right? This morning, well, you applied fourth line defense, training. You train your employee, okay? Then guess what happens, right? Why all these solutions fail? Okay, I look at this because I really saw this from research perspective, right? Okay, so what went wrong? Okay, well, actually, you can see, I think all those solutions are really sophisticated. Okay, well, something went wrong because philosophic failure. Why? I told you why, okay? Now, if you look at network, you look at systems. Now, you cannot simply think them of simply as connected devices anymore, okay? Human beings are part of any network, any systems, in at least 2 aspects. Number 1, you see, all those networks, all those systems are designed, developed by human, right? No one in the world is perfect, has a perfect knowledge. But you can find those type of people, but we all under pressure to deliver. So as a result, I can tell you with the probability 1, okay, with the probability 1, loophole exists in any network, any system. And indeed, NSA is trying to take advantage of this, right? Discover the loophole, then it wasn't like use that one to develop some tool to attack other organizations and countries, right? So loophole exists in any network, any system. Now what happens? Because, well, if you say the society, either the industry or the researcher, look at pessimistic, because if loophole is not discovered, nobody pay attention. Okay, so that's number 1, right? Number 2, okay. Now all these system networks are utilized by us, right? As a human being, we are vulnerable. You cannot say no matter how much effort you spend to train people, train every employee organization. Or some people say, okay, there must be one stupid employee you can never fix. Okay? So because this is respected, right? Because each time when I see so many phishing email, it's really tempting to click them, okay? Because when you're vulnerable, they got a problem. So you don't know who is vulnerable. You don't know when they're vulnerable, okay? So you don't know where the loophole is, you see? So you don't know where is the weak link, okay? So as a result, all the existing solutions, they're trying to what? They're trying to make a perfect world. Why? They want to deal with unknown, right? So what is unknown? We don't know where is the loophole, okay? We don't know who is vulnerable, when they're vulnerable, okay? Right? And we don't know where is the weak link. Because now when you move to the, now I think in many other countries, they're talking about advanced manufacturing, okay? Once we are there, and this problem becomes even worse. I don't know how many of you knew that the Ukraine's power plant problem, they have been hacked by, and some reported by Russia, twice. I think in the winter of 2015, in the winter of 2016. You can imagine, right? One city, 300,000 people went without power. Okay? So later on, because once the internet, well, in China got internet plus, okay? So once it connected with advanced manufacturing, you can imagine the problem is huge, okay? Then it's not a money issue, okay? It's really life, okay? Our life is on the table, okay? It's a big problem. So then what do we do about this? So basically, they all deal with unknown because as a scientist, we know that no matter how hard we try, when we do with unknown, we will make a mistake. So when we make some mistake, the hacker will win, or somebody will become victim. So as a result, to summarize, all solutions on the market now basically play with catch-up. Okay? Then what do you do about this? Right? You cannot become pessimistic. We have to do something. Because otherwise, because our life, our economy, going forward, our life, our economy will depend on internet more and more. Okay? So what do we do about this? So when I look at this one, I thought really hard about this. I said, okay, why not we start thinking oppositely? Okay? Now I don't deal with unknown. I deal with known. So that strategy I'm now promoting. Okay? Actually, we have product based on this. So let's now move to the next slide. So that's our strategy, data-centric security. Because I showed that network system data, right? Now you have to assume your network, your system will be compromised. And even you don't know when. Now, under this assumption, under this condition, what's the best thing you can do? Right? Ask myself, ask all of you, ask society. Under those conditions, what's the best you can do? Well, under those conditions, the best thing you can do is to protect your data. So make sure that your data can still function. Your normal web activity can still function within a compromised network, compromised system. So that's the approach I'm now promoting. So let's got data-centric approach to cybersecurity. And that's, I believe, is the only way you can make these things a little bit cleaner. Okay? So data-centric, so we deal with only the known. So then we ask ourselves, what is known? Cyberspace is really huge. It's huge. It's everything. Okay. Okay. So what is known? Well, our own data, right? We collect data. Okay. So from sensor, we generate data ourselves. Okay. We use data on a daily basis. The data, also the normal tool we are applying to access data. Those two things are known to us. Okay. So my philosophy is simple. Okay. I simply look after those two. The rest, I ignore them. Okay? So then, I want to borrow analogy from real world, right? So I just, okay, I want to make data immune to all malicious attacks. It doesn't matter if it's inside, malicious inside, or outside, or combination. Okay? So if you look at our real world, it's clean, not clean, right? Well, why? We are not sick. Why? Because we have immune system. So now I want to borrow that kind of philosophic thinking. Okay, can we make data immune to all malicious attacks? So if you do that, Then you can see, well, your data and your cyber activity can coexist with all looming threat without being attacked. I think that's the only way to move forward. Okay? So here I showed one slide because I will show the picture, right? Because the picture tells a lot of information. So next slide was from bank. You lock your data cybersecurity down. Okay? And last one will be really interesting, right? So it's more intuitive, right? You see? No wireless around us, it's okay. I'm doing my own thing. I don't care the rest. Okay? So that's our philosophy. Then you can see, how can you make this happen? Well, you need to solve a lot of technological challenges. Okay? So then we talk about the next slide, okay? Our core technology. How can make this happen? We have developed in my lab at University of Waterloo, so then we commercialize this one through startup company because University of Waterloo is really special. We encourage students, faculty to commercialize their own research result, okay? And we have probably the most liberal intellectual property policy in the world, okay? So university does not own anything unless you sign some contract with companies, okay? So any research results invented will belong to the inventors. It doesn't matter it's come from student, it doesn't matter it's come from faculty members, okay? So this was early there we have BlackBerry, okay? Right? BlackBerry is really come from my department, okay? Right. So we developed 6 pillar technology. So number 1, okay? To prevent data breach, you need encryption, okay? But encryption alone is not enough to handle cybersecurity. Now, if you look at the cryptography, so Canada has quite strong in cryptography, okay? Now, in the past, cryptography has been applied mainly for what purpose? Mainly for securing communication, right? So when you secure communication, because now we do all the e-commerce, the same thing, right? Each time you go to bank, do the banking transaction, you need exchange key. Well, how that happened? Well, that's through the public key system. Right? That concept was published in the IEEE Transaction Information Theory in 1976. So that single paper, right, has a lot of impact on society. Okay, but now you look at cybersecurity, you need more. Okay, what's more? In the past, right, you were only secure for communication. Now, even suppose I have a way to send my key to you, okay? Then I send my encrypted message to you, but once you got the message, you don't need key anymore. I don't need the key anymore. Both of us can throw the key away. That's exactly what we're doing in the e-commerce, okay? But now you talk about data protection, right? You want a solution to cybersecurity. The picture is quite different. Why so different? Well, you need to encrypt the data, right? You cannot use one key because one key, for some reason, is compromised. Everything is compromised. Okay, you need one key for every message, for every file. Okay, now you can see as time goes by, number of keys growing, right? You cannot throw it away. Okay, you will assume I have a secure way to send those keys to all of you, but who is going to help you to maintain secrecy of the key, right? Because the data will be accessed today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, maybe even 50 years from now. Okay? So who is going to help you maintain secrecy of the keys? Because then the vulnerability will become to that problem, right? So as a result, so in the cybersecurity, the key management problem become even more challenging. So including 3 aspects, right? Strong key generation, then have secure key distribution and establishment. So now we handle that through public key system. And for quantum people attack it because there is not secure when quantum computer comes. Okay, this is why in China they now built quantum satellite to do that. Okay. Last problem has been forgotten by the whole society for probably for 1,000 years. Okay, how do you maintain secrecy of the growing number of keys? That is really challenging. Fortunately, when I look at this one, I look at the problem in the reverse order because I was thinking in the opposite way. I solved the last problem. Well, they turned out I can solve the second one and the first one. We solved them all. So then we have a solution called post-quantum secure key management. So when I do key exchange, I do not rely on the public key anymore. And I solve this key maintenance problem. And later on I do the demo, you can see as user, you don't worry about that anymore, okay? So then, okay, so once you do this, you encrypt data, okay? At the moment data generated, that's fine, okay? That's why you can prevent data breach. But this does not prevent ransomware, right? People say, okay, yeah, I don't understand you, but I can go there to damage you, right? That's exactly what the ransomware does, right? Okay, so encryption does not solve that. So what happened? Because how about the malicious inside? What the other kind of attacks? Well, to address those challenges, okay, we further combined mandatory access control, which was proposed a long time ago by NSA, with encryption along with post-quantum secure key management. So I coined a new term called SIME. So smart integration of mandatory access control and encryption together, okay? So now, everything needs to go through us. Then you can see what you do, okay? Because now I mentioned before, I only watch two things, right? What you use, your own data, okay? You further fingerprint your normal processes, okay? You further fingerprint the data we want to watch, right? You put them together, you create some security policy. And this whole thing, this one, three together, will be implemented in the really low level of your computer or your smartphone, kernel level. So all file access will through this thing. As a result, now we can tell you in real time what is allowed, what is blocked. So this one here, we can tell you the real-time monitoring reporting. We will alert you. Okay? So you put all this together, right? Looks like, yeah, you have a really good solution, okay, to protect your data. Remember, I cannot make your system network 100% clean. No, I cannot do that. But what I can protect your data. Okay? So once you have all of this in place, right, very likely you have something wonderful. Okay? Well, there's still a remote risk. So let's pause for a moment. Right? What is remote risk? Well, because once you encrypt data, well, you have to make sure that your application is user-friendly, right? Because you make it so hard to use, people won't use it. Okay? So then, for the legitimate user, when they are using legitimate authorized process to access data, you have to be transparent. Okay? So then basically, user does not have to change the behavior, because you know how hard for you to ask people to change the behavior. It's very hard. Okay? So my wife and I sometimes argue each other. You know that because you change the other personality, it's impossible. The same thing. You want to change user behavior, it's very hard. Okay? So then you have to make sure it's transparent. But then there's remote risk. Well, I recognize, okay, that's you, because you authorize using authorized process. I'm transparent. But if somebody put the gun behind you, what do? Right? I have to kill you because I know you, right? But I cannot see. So to even handle that remote risk, you further apply machine learning to handle behavior intelligence. Okay? So put all this together, you can see, yeah, we have a very good solution. Okay? So how's time? Is it okay? Okay, it's good. So this one shows a little bit technical slide. Okay, basically you can see I can follow that kind of philosophy. Right? Well, your data will remain encrypted all the time. Okay, the process, right? We only have fingerprint your authorized process. You put them together, I can figure so-called policy. Right? This one will be protected, encrypted. Then put it here encrypted, because as this whole system is evolving, well, this one is also evolving. Okay, protect the policy. Now you can see when a user involve application, the process come in, we check. It is not allowed. It's not allowed, blocked immediately. Okay, we know that right away, right? And what is allowed for? Because now we talk about put data in the cloud, right? You want to share some critical data with your colleagues, with your friends. Okay, you need to protect them. So as a result, when this process come in, you is authorized. We need to ask what is for. Do you want to do some operation locally? Then in that case, you need plain text, right? If you want to move out the computer, put the cloud, or share with other people, in that case, I only give you ciphertext. Okay? So as a result, so this one has control, right? When I give you plain text, when I give you ciphertext. Okay? Because I handled the key management problem already, so the key part is gone. So then I can do that. So that's pretty much a high-level interpretation of the philosophy, okay? And another advantage is your data, is your secret, and is your control. Okay, in what sense? We are the facilitator. So when you develop any solution, it doesn't matter who will do that, right? The vendor should be remain neutral, zero knowledge. Okay, we are so facilitator, right? Number one, we don't have access to the data. Okay. Number two, we don't know your secret at all, because all your key will be generated on your own machine. Okay, we remain zero knowledge. Okay, and also we have so-called, because I don't know how many of you are using iPhone, right? You know iPhone, because my security philosophy or notion is quite different from Apple. I think in some sense we are much broader. In the iPhone security is limited only to what? To the device itself, right? You know that with iPhone, iOS, if you forgot your passcode, what happens? All your data, critical data on the phone is deemed lost. Okay, they cannot recover it. We can. Okay, actually we have so-called code recovery through the time sharing, through the secret sharing. So we still don't know anything, and that's also help us, right? Because you need to work with the government, because you need to make sure you are compliant with law enforcement. Through that technology, we can be compliant with law enforcement. So all those have been protected by the patents, okay? And so fully controlled by the user. All right? So with this one, maybe I need to move to, I probably don't have time to go through this one. Post-quantum secure key management, that's pretty technical thing, a lot of technical thing, okay? Probably skip this one, okay? We can talk about key management, right? Generation, distribution, and so that's every day how you do this, okay? So key, you need to send the key somewhere to the other end, okay? So before that public key paper, that's 1976, you have to do this, right? You know, many people get killed, right, because of this, okay? So then in the 1976, okay, it's a milestone, okay? So that's now all e-commerce based on that paper, okay? Actually, I was on for the Japan prize, right? We select one of the inventor, the RSA, so to be the 2017 Japan prize winner, okay? Because that single paper impacts society dramatically, okay? And so this one, skip. So then people say, okay, when quantum comes, okay, that's not secure anymore. This e-commerce is not secure anymore. Okay, so this is why now people do the quantum channel, quantum satellite, right? So that kind of thing, okay. But this one still solve like a really small problem. So this I skip this more technical thing, okay. I skip this one, then talk about the a lot of, because my background in information theory, a lot of technical details, okay. Now talk about solution, right? So I show you, now I need to switch to my computer over there. I show you live terminal to see how can really prevent ransomware attacks, okay? So So in this one, on my computer, I have two folders. Okay. Oh, how does? No. Lost connection physically. Okay, not ransomware. It's physical. Okay, now you can see I have two, maybe it's hard for you to see in the back, right? I have two folders. One is not protected. You can see the plain text, this on the left. One is protected. So all those files will remain encrypted. One file, one random key. The difference you see only one lock on each file, right, in the protected folder. Okay. Now, because earlier I mentioned that, right? Our solution protected data even within compromised system. Now in my computer, I have ransomware. Okay. Now I'm going to launch the ransomware. You can see what happens, right? I need to find the ransomware. Okay, just give me 1 second. This is ransomware. Ransomware can be anything, okay? This one just read me, right? It's really normal, right? It's ransomware. If I double click, the ransomware is launched. We will start to attack two folders. I only control, okay? Only two folders, right? To the demo, okay? So I click. You see? All files in the unprotected folder are gone now. Because they came into the damage for you, right? They encrypted for you, okay? Now, when they try and attack the other folder, protected folder, you can see what happens, right? Blocking. Real time, right? You try to access, but I don't know you, okay? I don't care, right? I don't even allow you to come close to my data. It's blocked in real time, okay? So you saw this one because the other folder was attacked successfully, right? So then become victim, okay? For the other one, you see you don't see anything, okay? I can still open any file. Look at this one, okay? It works fine, right? Okay? It works perfectly, okay? I don't know how much time I have. I can continue on to many more demos. 2 minutes? Okay, that's fine. Then probably I just stop at this point, okay? Oops. Show you more demos. I have many other demos, all right? So with this, I conclude my talk. Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I can see Professor Dunn, you're smiling, sir. I feel like I want to preach in this house this morning. Are you ready? Yeah. I had a message on Sunday. I wish you were in church with me. But now that you're here, I'm not going to preach this morning. Sorry. I'm going to talk to you about the topic that I'm here about this morning, and it's about ransomware. Dr. Yang just got me scared. Yeah. But we are the police, and we are here to serve and protect, so don't worry. Don't worry. We have a state-of-the-art lab right here in Jamaica, in the Jamaica Constabulary Force. I just want to reassure all Jamaicans that, as Dr. Yang says, we are playing catch-up, but, you know, we're trying to keep up as best as possible. We have lost a couple of our guys to Canada, yeah. I don't know if they're in Dr. Yang's lab. And of course, I see my counterpart here from NCB also. We have lost our guys to NCB. So it means that the JCF is doing something good, right? We're training our guys and getting ready to deal with the situation that is at hand. So, as you can see, and as I was introduced, I'm from the Communication Forensics and Cybercrime Division. At this point, I lead the team of 53 personnel. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about what we are seeing in Jamaica. And I hope that at the end of my speech, we can close all the doors, that you won't run out. You won't get scared, but you'll see what is happening in Jamaica, and of course the steps that we're taking to protect ourselves, protect the institutions that we have here, and of course to prepare ourselves if there should be an attack. Next. Okay. Right, so ransomware, of course we know, I won't try to elaborate on it. We know it's about data encryption, putting it in an unreadable format. Of course, the perpetrator will demand whatever they want in terms of money or in another format. So it's a global problem, and Jamaica is not excluded. Indeed, you know, we're seeing what is happening across the globe, and we are preparing ourselves, putting in place different solutions, different tactics of how to deal with the situation. So in a nutshell, just to refresh your memory and to remind you, the research has shown that at this point we have almost 10 million digital devices, and they says in the next 10 years it could be about 50 billion devices. It means more and more as the world becomes technologically dependent, we find ourselves that, you know, we do more of our transaction online by virtue of our mobile devices. And of course, if I check every person's phone now, you have so much personal and private information on it, you know, and that's what the hacker wants. That's what the criminal wants. Once they get in contact with your device, of course, they have access to a lot of information, a lot of data that is, of course, could be of some critical value to you. So at this point, check your phones, because I'm going to turn on my phone and probably some scanning may be taking place and you don't even realize what is happening. I can tell every single phone that is in this room, every single mobile device, I can tell you something about it. But don't get scared, I'm the police. I'm authorized to do that. So we keep scanning and scanning too. Of course, we don't want you to cry privacy, because indeed you are connected. They say we're getting to the point about the Internet of Things, where everything is connected, including the human being, in a very short while. So we consistently scan and scan to see if there's any vulnerabilities, there is anything open in terms of ports, so we can gain access. It can be of criminal intent, it can be just penetration testing, you don't know. But that may be running in the background right now, and you don't even realize that that is happening, because we tend to browse a lot and get on the internet a lot and do a lot of things online. So we're all connected. So once they get access and there's some vulnerabilities, it's open, then they take control of your device, running in the background, and you don't even realize. Once they get that capability, they'll launch an attack on your system. They'll disrupt it, maybe a banking, financial system, company, whatever you may desire. It may be some critical information. It may be government information. They disrupt the system, and of course, if they ask you to pay up and you don't pay over, then of course you run the risk of having your data being destroyed. Of course, we are seeing things happening, and it's coming. It's happening right here in this country. We have seen persons that we're kind of wary of, the persons that we are putting out there, you know, in terms of the institutions that we have, preparing people to become certified ethical hackers. Can you imagine? What a name. I hear somebody emphasizing certified ethical hackers. What if the person become unethical? That's our concern. You know, you can't stop the institutions from blocking people's education, but we are concerned, you know, in terms of what if persons become unethical after they have learned the different tactics of how to get access to people's information. So we have seen them, they are getting involved. We are in an era of the terrorism and all of that. All of this is pretty much a reality. And of course, as citizens of this country and globally, we have to be concerned. So basically what we're seeing in Jamaica in terms of the drivers to ransomware, and most often it's because an employee has been disgruntled. We have seen cases that come to us where persons are IT managers, and because they are fired, you know, they become disgruntled. They have all the access to the company's system. And I encourage you at this time, we need to have redundancies and backups at all time in terms of your expertise and persons that you employ as these persons in the capacity of IT personnel, because they can get very, very, rude and very, in a way that they can take some action against the company. Of course, it can be malicious. It's a direct intent because they want to disrupt and destroy your activities. And of course, we have seen persons get into ransomware as a driver because they want some form of monetary reward or another form of reward. So the impact of ransomware on Jamaica. Of course, people are getting into the business of ransomware for money. In Jamaica, we are seeing that. They are getting into the business from the mere fact of blackmailing the institution. Of course, that's one of the hackers that we caught, but don't pay too much attention on that. So in 2015 to 2017, in Jamaica, we have had 8 cases reported to us. 1 case has been disposed of, means that the person been successfully brought before the court and have been convicted for the offense. 2 cases have been thrown out because it's not properly prepared. There is not enough evidence to support the case, so it has to be thrown out. And of course, at this point, we have 4 cases that we're still investigating. Yes, indeed, that's in Jamaica land that we love. So the cost of business, and we try to piggyback on what is happening globally. And of course, we look at reports coming from different entities to get an idea of exactly what is happening. So we know we are, on a daily basis, we communicate by emails. And this is one of the very weak fence. I send you an email, probably of your alma mater, yeah? Yeah, you'll be glad to click on it, ain't it, right? I send in that email a ransomware, a malicious software. You click on it, of course, it dumps it on your system. You don't even realize that that is happening. We have had an institution, luckily they were able to quarantine quickly, realizing that they got an email, and as Dr. Yang says, the weak fence is, of course, the user, the employee clicks on it. It talks about a jury list. You have a civic responsibility you can be called upon to be a juror. So you'll be tempted to click on it. But little did you know that the Ministry of Justice doesn't require you to serve as a juror by sending you an email. So persons get caught. And that institution, they click on it, and right away, it was just about to disrupt the entire system, to encrypt the system. But swiftly, the IT personnel was able to control it in an environment, quarantine the system that was infected, and of course, they took a look at what was happening. So business email compromise is very, very prominent in Jamaica. Of course, they're going further. Business processes compromise. Yeah, I may send to a check for $10 million to pay to, you may trade with your suppliers. So they're going at the end of the chain, the business process. We're at the printer. Of course, the printer is all digital. So they'll change. So let's say Warren Williams should get that $10 million. They go to the end of the printer and take out the S, and the person is Warren Williams. And of course, that money is there to Warren Williams. And you don't even realize that is happening. Of course, they're taking advantage of the encryption at those points, and you must be wary. So we look at Trend Micro in 2016 and look at what they're saying in terms of their report. That's about 18 in 2016 in terms of $80 billion in terms of losses. And of course, we have seen a great percentage of these families coming, they have increased from about 246 new families, and now it reached at about 752 in terms of percentage. So ransomware in 26 has grown significantly, and that's what Trend Micro is reporting. Also, they're saying that most time, a greater percentage of ransomware is most frequently encountered when users visit a bogus site. How do you are you sure? And I see my my counterpart here, who's going to present, hopefully. When I put an NCB website, how are you sure it's an authentic NCB website? You can get caught by just putting in your debit and credit card information, and you don't realize that you have just visited a site that has a malicious software that can become a ransomware and encrypts your information. And they are saying 60% say their biggest vulnerability is on the susceptibility of their own employees, all the users, and 53% of the respondents have been victims of ransomware attacks in the past year of 2016. Trend Micro is also saying, in terms of consequences felt by organization in terms of ransomware infection, they say 59% of all the businesses. I can't at least say what's the population size in terms of how they did the survey, but they're saying 59% of business disruption that happened in 2016. And of course, it caused some reputational damage. Of course, there are losses in terms of proprietary information, and of course, a lower percent, in terms of 22%, there was financial losses. So as I said, new targets for ransomware, and if we talk about business processes, we talk about ATM machines, all of these digital items, as we expand more into the digital world, we find more and more that once we are connected, of course, we run the risk of being a target in terms of criminal elements. So what is the government of Jamaica doing and law enforcement? Of course, our response is we are preparing ourselves. We need to have a multidimensional approach in terms of law enforcement, you, the end users, and of course, people like Dr. Chang, the technical industry. We have to work together as a team to deal with this rising challenge. It's a reality, and we don't want to just sit back and relax and think everything is just nice and dandy. Jamaica have taken some steps so far in terms of providing some tools that law enforcement can work with in terms of legislation. Of course, we want to push the government also to get into the habit of some sort of a regulation. The internet has no regulation. It's unregulated. The internet has no borders. It means that a perpetrator can attack your system from anywhere across the globe. You can have some sort of servers sitting somewhere you don't even realize. It's not in Jamaica. And of course, they attack your system, and it gives the police the trouble to find where this perpetrator has originated from. And that's indeed an area that we are concerned about. So the Cybercrime Act came. It's now up for another revision. The new Cybercrime Act came about in 2015. And of course, at this time, it's now being revised because each year we realize that, the offenses, new techniques, things are happening, and we just want to ensure that we have prepared ourselves. We get it on the books. We want it to serve as a deterrence to the criminals. So we have also, at this point, increased the fines. If it's in the lower court, it's now the parish court. People can get between 3 to 5 years or up to $3 to $5 million. If it's in the higher court, you can get a maximum of 20 years or $20 million. We hope that maybe at the end of this revision, of course, it can also be increased even further yet, because criminals are now saying, Jamaica is a big trouble on the western side of the island. For some reason, people don't want to work anymore. People just want to sit and scam people because it's so easy. Why would persons want the police to chase them down when they can sit in the ambience of their bedroom, commit an offense behind a computer, and give the police the trouble to come and find that individual? It's easy. So persons are graduating with various technical skills and abilities, and of course they are getting involved in this kind of criminal act. So in terms of the good news is, from a forensic perspective, there is always a digital footprint. We can always, no matter how slick offenders believe they are, there's always a digital footprint that the law enforcement can use it, to find the perpetrator. So we try to, sell the slogans in terms of you as businesses and users to protect, detect, and respond. You first protect, of course, you get in the business of detecting. You may want to do penetration testing of your own system to see how vulnerable your system is. And of course, be in a position to respond just in case there is some sort of eventuality. So we say be ready. You have to constantly monitor what is happening on your system. Be ready to address all the weaknesses in terms of vulnerabilities. Be able to respond, mitigate if there are issues. Have some persons who can analyze, and of course it assists us as law enforcement too. When you can analyze what this ransomware does, it puts us in a better position in terms of our strategic preparation and be ready to deal with the challenges that are on that. Of course, you want to be in a position to recover just in case your critical information is encrypted. And when we say critical, I want to also include things like critical infrastructures. And across the globe, it can be defined in many ways. But in Jamaica, we could say things that allow us to, have some revenue generation. Things like our power companies, our telcos. All of these companies are now a part of the Internet of Things and are computer operated. And criminals can encrypt that information and shut our systems down. Of course, before you click, we want to advise you to observe, pay attention to what you're doing. Don't just click, click, click. Do not be fooled that you win $10 million and you click on it, yeah? Can't understand how people consistently get caught with that. And of course, be ready to investigate. And of course, you must continue to focus on what you do. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here again this year. I think last year I rushed through, for those who were here. I had to rush through my presentation because of time. I'm hoping that I will be able to comfortably take my 10 minutes or less today. We're talking about a very significant and concerning matter of ransomware. And I too got a little scared when Dr. Yan was speaking, being an IT person, it is challenging sometimes when you have to face and speak about these things. But this morning, as I scoured through the newspaper online, one of the things that came to my attention was this. It was a question, and I presume someone was doing a risk review or analysis. The question was, can Russia hack the US power grid? Well, that's the question that was being discussed in that article. And I believe it is important for us to understand that the same question may be asked of our power grid. There's not a lot of, well, I don't work with the power company. We have to question the extent to which we are exposed to some of these situations that we face. Now, I looked at a research from Europol, and they are looking at basically organized crime throughout the world. And they have agreed that cybercrime is a key challenge. And I think we are all agreeing today that it is a key challenge to the world. Cyber-dependent crimes have underpinned a significant amount of the crimes that are being committed in the world. And Jamaica is not immune from such a thing. Now, you have what is referred to as crime as a service. Yes? Now, a ransomware, you don't need to know how to create a ransomware. You are able to go online and apply, and so with small fees, you're able to request and get your services rendered to you, getting a ransomware. Criminals are utilizing technology, the same technology, and we have been speaking about that, the same technology that we have been using to secure our organization is the same technology that persons are utilizing to compromise our security. You have organized crime groups that are seeking to infiltrate our organizations and are causing serious, not only physical, but monetary, particularly loss to the organization. And I'm not sure where the statistics is now in regards to how much has been lost to cybercrime. So we are agreeing. These situations are part of the greatest challenges that we face. And organized crime criminals are utilizing the same technology that we're utilizing to defend ourselves. Now, in the report from Europol, they have identified some, call it engines or drivers for these things. I've had a few, but some of them are document fraud. Now, I want to, when I speak up, I want to expand that a little bit because persons are manipulating information in such a way to facilitate their illicit activities. They are, so you can, whichever direction you want to go, we have human trafficking. To facilitate that, persons are manipulating birth certificates. To facilitate trade, persons are manufacturing bills of sale. A few years ago, I was involved with an investigation in which persons were importing things into Jamaica. And to reduce the cost they pay to the government, they have been making their own invoices. You have data trading, and we heard earlier of several situations in which several of our companies have been hacked. Not only locally, but abroad. Yahoo, 100% of Yahoo accounts, we have stated before, have been compromised. And several other persons. Now, this is a significant business, and we need to understand that people are no longer interested in your cell phone. People are interested in your data. And a significant amount of your life's information resides on those devices. From the organization that I represent, the Financial Investigations Division, we are interested in this other one, money laundering. When it comes down to in Jamaica, we say the nitty-gritty. People are concerned about getting your money. That's what people want. And as long as they're able to get your money, whatever means that they're going to be utilizing, they are going to be getting at your finances. Now, Jamaica is also being used as a portal to launder money because maybe it is considered that our fences are not strong enough. Or banking systems are not rigid enough to identify such a situation. But nonetheless, we are still fighting the fight. With the police, we are continuing to ensure that we use the different legislations that are available to identify incidents of money laundering and terrorist financing. As a means of money laundering, you'll recognize that many institutions or organized crimes groups will trade internationally using online portals. And And this is being done as a means to, as we use the concept, wash or clean their money. Now, it is important to understand that, listen, unless we have linkages, and we need these linkages to be able to identify where persons have gone into illicit activities. We also have this matter of card not present fraud. This is very, very rampant in Jamaica. Persons are duplicating, hacking, accessing your information using your online your portals. And so you may have your credit card or your debit card in your possession, but persons are able to access through your credit card information that you are your values, your monies. So all the things that we use in our day-to-day activity for our own benefit, we do online transaction. The criminals are using it also. They are utilizing encrypted communication channels to ensure or to disguise their information. Drone is the new technology. And I think Jamaica has bought into drones also. Well, it is something that is being used by the criminal network. Not just for, well, I heard recently that the Ministry of Agriculture was going to be using drones in their agricultural mapping and stuff like that. It has been used by the criminal to do scoping and to be able to get information to further their criminal network. The internet was created for a particular purpose. But now, as we are aware, the internet is being used, particularly what we refer to as the dark web. It's basically an area of the internet that is not indexed. So it's not available from Google or your regular browsers. Persons have used other resources to access the dark web and are trading through the dark web. Automated logistics and printing services are also critical elements of the tools that persons are utilizing to get past us and our resources. Now, what are some of the things that they are doing? We have cryptocurrency counterfeiting, intellectual property crimes. All of these things are things that are happening. Trafficking in firearms. I was very appalled recently when I heard that Jamaica the police has recovered over 800 firearms in Jamaica. Sports corruption, drug production, and many times you hear customs identifying goods at our wharves that are not genuine. I'm like to suggest that this is one method that organized criminal groups have utilized to launder their funds. So we have several players. We have persons who are providing the service as a crime as a service. You have the groups. The groups and the networks, they have formed themselves into different organizations that are able to infiltrate a country like Jamaica and to weaken and to remove persons' hard-earned funds. Now, we have also seen incidents of cash smuggling, trade, and I spoke about the matter of persons purchasing abroad and shipping to other countries to facilitate their money being made clean. You have other types of money laundering activities. But what you recognize is that many of these then find themselves into the underworld, where the new payment system, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, are being utilized. as a method to hide the tracks of these participants. We also recognize that when it comes down to ransomware, which is the main concept of what we're talking about, that also they are utilizing the underworld to divert funds into these to the criminals. Now, I'm aware, and Inspector Williams can validate the information, that several entities in Jamaica have been impacted by ransomware. Now, these are things that we need to deal with. Now, as long as organized criminals are able to get their funds and to use it and to clean it, then they will continue to live. They will continue to be propagated into the society. They need to ensure that their business, albeit illicit, continues. And so they may have a business continuity plan. Yes? So we therefore need to find ways of dealing with these particular matters. Now, I came upon this word. It's a new word to me, all right? Cryptoware. Basically, it's cryptography with ransomware. Yes? People are utilizing ingenious ways to ensure that the countermeasures that have already been identified for ransomware are not successful. So they are even making it more hard. Because again, the base is money. As long as they're able to get their money, they're good, right? So this slide is intended to show you how it works. So but it's kind of light, so I'm going to pass it a little, right? So what's the impact of all of this? We are observing that people their intellectual property is being compromised because persons keep their information not in a secure manner. And you value your information, then you may be minded to pay a ransomware con artist. We have already spoken about the massive amount of data that has been lost because of because of ransomware. We have loss of identity. Again, we spoke about Yahoo with 100% of their account, including mine, being compromised. Fraud, extortion, loss of integrity. And I speak about loss of integrity. I'm not talking about personal integrity. We're talking about information integrity. NCB is here. What if NCB's system was compromised? What if my organization's system was compromised, the Ministry of Finance? Then we could not speak with any matter of integrity about in terms of the information that we are providing our clients. It is therefore necessary for us to do all we can to ensure and to identify and to protect this data, because not because Jamaica is a third world country doesn't mean that persons are not interested. Persons may be using us as a stepping point to somewhere else, all right? All of this is a summary of the report from Interpol, and don't try to read it. They have come up with some points that I think are relevant, and I'm concluding with my last few slides. They have identified some recommended priorities. The question we're answering, how do we protect ourselves against ransomware and other threats that we face? They're saying to us that we must focus. We need to focus on what the items that organized crime is involved in particularly. Now, the table before showed several things. They have listed 5 of the items. they said cybercrime, and in all its form, must be focused on drug production, organized property crime, trafficking in persons, migrant smuggling, and they have gone to another, even gone more granular. Now, these three cuts across all areas in terms of criminality. And I have at the top criminal financing and money laundering. This is a critical matter. As I said, nothing else matters but the money. People are interested in getting the money. Even the criminals want their money. And therefore, we need to focus on criminal financing. Where is the money coming from? Where's the money coming from? Is Jamaica's economy, is our banking system being used to launder money received as payment for ransomware? Document fraud. People are utilizing documents or manufacturing documents to cover the tracks of their illicit activities. Question is, are we able to detect those? Online trading is being used as a mechanism for persons to bypass, and Jamaica has a significant amount of trade going on. Lots of goods are coming in. The question is, could some of these goods really be products of the illicit trade? It's a question for us to answer. I'm concluding. The Financial Investigations Division is positioned, and we are ready to assist in identifying and investigating all aspects of terrorism financing and money laundering. We have been designated by the particular legislations for this purpose. And we are ready. Right, presently, we are continuing our analysis of data that we receive to facilitate and to identify the incidents or the possibility of incidents or persons utilizing our financial system for money laundering. It doesn't mean that we're able to identify all, but we are establishing relationships with several of our counterparts internationally, including Europol, and the FBI and several other, and our local partners like Mr. Williams, to identify some of these things. I think the police had a slogan some years ago. It says, don't hide it, tell it. So if you have information about any aspect of persons utilizing our information system or environment for money laundering or any sort of criminal activity, the FID is wanting to hear this information so that we can pursue recover the information and the funds that they are utilizing so their organizations can go down. Thank you.
Another round of applause for all our presenters, please. A lot of information to absorb. Very informative, gentlemen. At this point, I'm going to just quickly do a review. I hope you have written your questions down of what was discussed by the presenters. Dr. Yang spoke to the cyberspace challenges that we have around security. He spoke to some of the major hits we took in recent times through WannaCry and Equifax. He also looked at some of the kind of costs where Sandie had a $1 to $2 billion loss, and several instances like that. We have also where he looked at the frustration of our reality and how he came up with a solution to combat what he calls philosophical failure. His focus is on dealing with the known instead of trying to deal with all of these unknowns. And it was, a new and refreshing approach to how to combat ransomware by protecting your data, by focusing on what people do and how they do it. He also went in some of the technical things around post-quantum cryptography. And what this is speaking to is computers that can quickly decipher 128 or 256-bit cipher keys, which couldn't be done in the not too distant past. They're saying in another few years this can be broken in seconds. So what are we going to do with these keys that we have today when the post-quantum era comes? And he also looked at how we can use machine learning to help us to automate management of the keys and so on, that we definitely can't do manually because we'll be having so many millions of keys being generated as we go. So a very good presentation on that philosophical shift. Inspector Williams spoke to local attacks that we are seeing on the ground in Jamaica. He compared our little land with the rest of the world. There are some 10 billion digital devices out there. And there's a lot of covert and discrete scan happening without us knowing that are being used by some of these people to perpetrate the acts that they do. He also looked at what we call certified ethical hackers. These are people who are, we call white hats, who are paid to do the same thing that a hacker does to help us to shore up our systems. But what if they go to the dark side? He looked at some of the causes for ransomware, disgruntled employees, people doing this for revenge, people doing it for blackmail. But at the end of the day, ransomware is here. And in Jamaica, he cited that we have had 8 reported cases. A few were thrown out because of improper evidence and preparation. A few are still on investigation, and 1 person has been prosecuted, which is good. First step. One of the common threads from all the presenters was phishing emails, you know, because this is where it starts. You know, you get an email, you click on a link, you go to a site, and suddenly you have ransomware, you know. There was some discussion around our employees and users. Are they trained? Do they know how to respond to prevent these types of attacks? We're all connected, and we're borderless and unregulated, so there are a lot of threats that come as a result of that being the reality of cyberspace. He spoke about the revisions to the Cybercrime Act, which has seen significant increases in time and fines, and he's hoping that those will be increased some more. And he spoke at the end to a forensic audit, how they track down digital footprints to find these perpetrators and bring them to justice. But very importantly, he spoke to detect, protect, and respond, understanding your environment and being strategically prepared to deal with attacks such as ransomware. So Tucker started with a very interesting question around can Russia hack the US power grid? Frightening notion, because if the US power grid goes down, we won't be able to shop on Amazon, won't be able to Google anything. You know, it could have significant implications on the world. And the question also was raised, can the Jamaica power grid be hacked? Food for thought. And this was very interesting. He spoke to, well, we have all heard of software as a service, platform as a service, network as a service, but now we have crime as a service. It's an interesting one. And he's speaking to the fact that the people in the underworld, the criminals, are actually using the same technologies that we use to do our day-to-day to attack us. So, you know, for normal day-to-day operations and security, the tools that we use to do our work and protect ourselves are being used by these criminals. He spoke to some of the things in the threat landscape around, you know, intellectual property theft, cash smuggling, you know, and he went to the payments through cryptocurrencies. What I found interesting also is that the criminals now have business continuity plans. So the crime just seems to be another industry. He went through some recommendations around how, you know, his area is tackling some of these crimes, focus on the source of funds, the Terrorism Prevention Act, and of course working with the police, using that old adage, don't hide it, tell it. So a lot of information has been covered by all our presenters. Thank you very much, gentlemen. At this point in time, we're going to be taking questions. There's a microphone in the middle from members of the audience, but before going to the questions, I just want to start with a few questions myself. And they're simple questions, so you can prepare yours in the meantime. The first one is for Dr. Yang. And as it regards your shift in the philosophical mindset, because today so we're trying to prevent the unknown, you know, by using all of the tools that we know, firewalls, having antivirus software installed and so on, trying to prevent things that could happen before they happen. And your philosophical shift is to deal with what you know. So the tools that you're developing, the technologies that you're developing are looking at who does what with the data that you have, and that's where you protect it. So regardless of what is happening out there, the question is, how soon do you see this concept catching on and being taken up by the big players in the industry? Is it something that is going to happen in the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years? That's a question I'd like you to answer for me. You can use the microphone on the table. At the bottom, yes.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. I think I'm starting to see some companies, okay, who are quite eager to really adopt this kind of approach, because we have some product already on the market, right? So some like telco, big telco, and some banks, and police, government, even like a smartphone manufacturer, they already agree this is the right approach to go. So they already supplied some of our product. So I hope starting probably 5 years from now, I think 5 years from now, this approach, I think will become more and more dominant in the whole space, because I really don't see this another way to get around this. So thank you.
Thank you. Inspector Williams, for the cases that were thrown out by the courts for incomplete or improper evidence and so on, the question is it just a lack of preparation by the legal teams, the legal minds, or does it have anything to do with the legislation that exists? Are the acts that are currently in place, even with the revised Cybercrime Act, adequate?
I don't want to expose my country too much, But nevertheless, in fact, it is so. Based on the prosecution, I mean, they too need some level of training, how to prosecute these cases. The judiciary needs to have some training also. So that's a challenge. While the police will have the capabilities to investigate and put the evidence together in presenting the evidence so that we can have a successful conviction, that's where the shortfall is. But we're working on that.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Tucker, I think you get the simplest question. What, in your mind, has been the effectiveness or of the job that you perform in terms of what you do in line with what the police does? Do you have the tools and the personnel to be effective?
Well, that's one of the biggest challenges that we have. That crime is such a massive situation, and law enforcement is always playing catch up to be able to deal with the situations that we face. We don't have all the resources to do what is necessary. We're still looking for additional ways to recover or to analyze the information that we acquire, to be able to find and to determine whether or not a transaction is an illicit transaction. We also need to identify other linkages. For example, you would be aware that Jamaica is part of the Egmont group and also the other financial groups around. That facilitates us getting information and being able to share information with our counterparts. But we, from a Jamaican standpoint, need to be able to identify what really is happening in the greater landscape. Are we able to identify who the organized crime groups are? If we're not able to identify, it will appear a legitimate transaction or a legitimate purchase of goods. And as such, we will not be able to determine that it is so. So we really do need a collaborative operation. And as I said before, we collaborate with the police, we collaborate with our international partners. And this has helped us in ways. But I think there's much more. There's much more for us to do to be able to reach the point that we...
Okay, thank you. And for you, Mrs. King James, this question is around the common thread which I identified in most of the presentations. It spoke to phishing attacks being
the gateway to get ransomware in. So the question for you, Sandie, is some of the things that you may be doing at NCB, or just some of the general best practices around the world to help us to deal with phishing.
Okay, thank you, Cecil. Well, at NCB, the way we deal with phishing, the way we deal with ransomware, it's in keeping with how we deal with security in general. So we try not to react to the latest trend, even though we need to be aware of it and the latest techniques. What we try and do is shore up our internal infrastructure, our processes, and our people to enable them to withstand an attack in whatever form that attack may come. So we look at our infrastructure. Ransomware takes advantage of some vulnerability in an application, operating system, etc. And one of the keys to being able to adequately meet and block that threat is to ensure that you're doing something as simple as patching your systems, deploying your software updates on an ongoing basis. And it shouldn't just be a reactive thing that you do when you hear of a threat out in the wild. It should be part of your day-to-day and normal operations. So that's one of the areas that we look at. We also try and understand where our important assets are. So which of our systems are holding critical data, customer data, very important for us. And we classify our systems based on the type of data that are held in them and are processed by them. And we try and segment those systems from the rest of our network. And certainly we don't allow persons who don't need to access those systems to have access. So we place network controls, and also we harden those systems. So we really go above, we really take things to another level when it comes to our critical assets. For ransomware in particular, we find with WannaCry, that particular strain of ransomware took advantage of a known patch. And when you look at the history of ransomware attacks, they're taking advantage of known vulnerabilities for which patches are available. So patch management is critical. The other thing is that if you are not keeping your systems up to date, if you are running desupported systems and so on, you have no defense at all when it comes to a ransomware attack. You find that many of the institutions that were affected by WannaCry were still running XP. I mean, it's difficult for some institutions, health services, etc., who may be running equipment that uses an old operating systems, and those tend to be less. Those tend to be in an institution for a long period of time, because it's a major investment in terms of financial investment. So, but what we try to do is ensure that we keep our systems up to date. We're constantly reviewing our applications. We have an application refresh cycle. And there are instances when you are not able to update your applications. In those cases, we ensure that we segment those older versions of the applications from our critical systems, so that if they are compromised, there's still an air gap between those systems and our critical assets. And there are many more things that you need to do. Data backup and recovery. You need to be resilient. If you are affected, and the data has shown that organizations of every type, every industry, every size has been affected by ransomware. And some of them losing millions of dollars, affecting transportation, shipping, health services, etc. And one of the things that we have found is that we need to have the ability to recover quickly. So you need to be backing up your data. That backup has to be kept offline. You can't have everything online, because once it's online, it can be affected by the same ransomware attacks. The other thing that occurred to me was that ransomware has been increasing in frequency recently, in recent years, just because of the success of it. Persons are able to reap huge rewards just by, well, first of all, they can collect a ransom, and then the data that they steal as part of the ransomware ecosystem, they are able to sell it, and then they also sell access to the network or to the systems that they've compromised. So it's a whole ecosystem that's funding, this whole ransomware cycle. And because of that, we expect ransomware to continue to increase in terms, it continue to mushroom in terms of incidents. Credit card, revenue from credit card data is reducing because the Western Hemisphere has moved to chip technology, and that was one of the mainstream revenue streams of the cyber criminals. So they're looking to diversify, and ransomware presents the opportunity for them to do that. So as an institution, we're ensuring that we adopt the fundamentals, we ensure that the fundamentals are in place and we're applying them consistently, and we're always looking to improve, and we don't rely on what we've achieved yesterday. We're always looking to continuously improve our processes, our human defenses, and our systems to ensure that we're able to withstand such an attack.
Thank you, Sandie. Very comprehensive. All right, so at this time we're going to be taking questions from the audience. I'm going to ask you to just identify yourself and your company if you're with a company at the point that you're going to ask your question. All right, so the microphone is open. I don't see anyone moving to the microphone, so I'll just use the opportunity until someone gets there to read some quotes. I'll be reading these as we close out today. And there are some quotes, historical quotes about computing systems. The first one is, computers in the future may weigh no more than 1.5 tons. Popular Mechanics forecasting the relentless march of science in 1949. Yes.
So my question is to Mr. Tucker and Ms. Sandie King from NCB and Mr. Finance. This is a bit off topic, but oftentimes, in my experience, when reporting vulnerabilities or bugs to organizations or government agencies, it's often met with suspicion and skepticism. In both opinions. Hello? All right, thank you. So I'll just repeat for people in the back. So my question is, oftentimes when reporting vulnerabilities or bugs to, to government agencies or corporate entities, it's often met with suspicion or, oh, by the way, Jordan Jones, front-end engineer at Incrementic. So it's often met with suspicion and skepticism. My question to both of you, being from a government agency and a corporate entity, what sort of policies, like bug bounties or incentives for rewards exists for reporting vulnerabilities or bugs?
So that's it. That's a very interesting question. Is just that possibly the minister is not here to say whether or not there's a policy there, but because now you're talking about rewarding persons for identifying such a thing, and I think it is this principle is used internationally to use as we call them ethical hackers, or to identify vulnerability in the systems, and as such, when they do identify these things, they are compensated / rewarded. I'm not aware of a system in Jamaica, particularly within the government service, to compensate. But I do think that you would have been recognized as a good citizen. I'm hoping that that is sufficient because you'll be contributing to the safety and integrity of Jamaica's computer systems.
Can I have a follow-up?
Sure.
So would you then agree then if such a policy existed, would it decrease the level of frequency in cyber crimes, or better assist you as well as corporate entities like NCB in preemptively finding these vulnerabilities and bugs?
Well, I think we need all hands on deck. We can't pay all the hands, but we do need all hands on deck. And if there are persons who are able to identify that the information system, the banking system is under threat, or the government systems are under threat, then this is something that I'm sure the government would, I'm not speaking on behalf of the government, you know, would consider and give credence to. Because as I said before, we have not all the resources that we require to identify. If we did, then criminality in Jamaica would have been done, right? So we do really need all the hands on deck and persons who have the competency. You see something happening, you need to tell the police. And there are different avenues. There is now the CERT, Jamaica CERT. I think there's an email address. I'm not sure what the email address is. JACERT at MSET? At mset.gov.jm. If you have identified a vulnerability, you need to send an email to the CERT or call them. They have a website, and as such, you're able to reach out and give that information. And I'm sure that I am aware that this information is not kept in a file. It is passed on to the police who continue the investigation.
Okay. In the past, we have been made aware by private citizens that they're seeing vulnerabilities in our particular system, and we didn't know whether to take it seriously or not. But you know, all such reports we do take seriously and we investigate, and we also try to be proactive about the situation. So we are constantly testing and retesting our systems using, you know, similar methods that the hackers do, and to try and ensure that, you know, if an attack should be raised against us, that we'd be prepared. So the avenues for reporting and information sharing and collaboration may not be fully mature as it stands today, but I expect it to change, because cybercrime is a threat that faces all of us, as private citizens, as corporations, as governments. So in the future, I expect more and more sharing and of ideas and the countermeasures and so on as to how we can actually get a hold of the problem.
Might I just yeah, from the law enforcement, might I just had, because you kind of get me scared right there. We don't want to open a can of worms in that people are just getting ready to create some malware or create some ransomware to be paid for it, to find it. No, I'm not saying you're doing that. But one of the things that we recognize in Jamaica, there is a lot of underreporting, both from public and private entities. So we true picture of exactly what is happening in the Jamaican scope and space. So with things like the data protection legislation that is now will soon be passed, it should put you know, citizens at auto relief that here it is that my information, if it gets out, if it's encrypted, if it's taken by the criminal, then the entity must be held responsible for my data. So that is coming on stream.
All right, thank you.
Are there any more questions for the panel?
Camille Facey, great presentations. Thank you very much. To open a bank account in Jamaica now, you have to give your life history. Do we have statistics or any underpinning information that shows that we are more used in Jamaica for money laundering than other territories, say the US? And how do we compare what we are asking our citizens to do in order to open basic accounts or do any kind of banking transaction as compared with, say, what the US requires of its people?
Okay, let me help with that response. Being an employee of NCB, the information that NCB asked you for is primarily guided by regulations. So there is the Anti-Money Laundering Act, AML, and KYC. These are, for want of a better word, imposed on us by our central bank and so on. So we have to follow these regulations. So in terms of the data, statistically how we stack up against the rest of the world, I don't have that information for you today, but we are going to be in breach of our regulation if we don't ask you for this information. And so it's a requirement that we can choose to ignore, or we can choose to ignore at our own peril. So it's not something that NCB has foisted on you as a financial institution, nor as any other financial institution. It's just a regulation that we have to follow, and we're required to be compliant with that regulation.
Yes, but what I'm asking is, and I understand these regulations exist, but say if the Bank of Jamaica, have we done a comparison to see how we are comparing in terms of the regulations here vis-a-vis the rest of the world?
Right, and I'm saying I don't have that data today.
Maybe somebody else has.
Right. Hold a second. You can stay that in.
Hi, good afternoon. We don't have the data necessarily in terms of how our regulations compare, but various international bodies, they will risk rate or rank countries based on the incidences of money laundering, drug trafficking, and so forth. And the reality is that Jamaica shows up on these high-risk lists. Many countries in the Caribbean do. DOMREP is up there. Many countries in Africa, Eastern Europe. So that's where it starts, right? These international lists, POCA regulations, and so forth. And from there, the Bank of Jamaica creates a set of regulations that they deem will keep the country in good standing, as well as keep our financial institutions in good standing. Notwithstanding that, as a financial institution, and I can only speak for NCB, we've recognized that we do have to improve the customer experience, and that's one of the opportunities that digital technology has provided. So if you walk into one of our branches today, we actually have a self-service portal to allow customers to open an account. For existing customers, that process is now under 5 minutes. For new customers, because we need to ask for some new information, that process is about 30 minutes and decreasing. And what we've done is we've used what we do have. We can't change the regulations, but there are certain things that we can do. So we now take your TRN. We go directly to the driver's license database to pull down your information, validate who you are. We minimize the data input that's required of you. And in leveraging solutions like these, this is how we're now bringing down the account opening time and making that experience a lot more convenient. But with all of these solutions, even as we try to be more customer friendly, we do have to keep cybersecurity in mind and continue to make sure that we're protecting your information. So I hope that helps.
Good afternoon. My name is Paulette Price. I am a real estate agent with Coldwell Banker. As a real estate agent, we have to collect POCA information. And did we kick up ruckus? Because we were afraid of collecting other people's information. What I want to know is that you've mentioned the Data Protection Act, where I come from, which is the UK. The Data Protection Act means everybody must take care of your information. Can you tell me if Jamaica is going to be doing the same thing? my information should be open to me, which sometimes I find that people collect your information here, but they don't want to share it with you. It's mine, you need to tell me. So will the Data Protection Act here in Jamaica be the same? And also, could you tell us what are going to be the guidelines? Because when we have to collect other people's information, we want to know it's protected. You know, where is it stored? Is it just going to be put in a filing cabinet and locked away? Is it going to be in the cloud? Is the cloud protected? So we need to educate people all about that, but we want to know what Jamaica's going to do. Thank you.
You're putting me on the spot. You know, I'm a law enforcer, not a lawmaker. We wish someone was here from the Ministry of Justice, or Trevor is here. No? Well, well, we're not here from that in terms of, oh.
So, I'm gonna, right, let me answer that question. Morning, everybody. Well, afternoon, I'm not going to try to stay between you and lunch too long. As it relates to what Jamaica is doing, first of all, I would assume you've heard that the Data Protection Bill has been tabled in Parliament, all right, about a month ago. All right, so, and the first Joint Select Committee meeting was had last week. The submissions by or from the public, there is a public notice, and the deadline for submissions by the public is the 3rd of January. Following that, on the 9th of January, the next Joint Select Committee meeting will be had, where public can come in and air their concerns and so on. As it relates to what the Data Protection Bill will do, I'll answer your specific question. Yes, it will do that. It has provisions for that, because it is the first piece of legislation that contemplates the fact that your data is yours, right? It also contemplates what has to be done in or by custodians of your data. Because what we find happening now is that a lot of people collect your data, whether it's just your email and your phone number, or a whole host of things like what you have to give banks and credit unions and credit reporting agencies. And we're not sure, and you're not sure, if they're treating with it in a secure way. So what the legislation will do will see the creation of what's called an Office of the Data Commissioner. And the Data Commissioner will be responsible for writing and creating regulations that dictate how what we call data controllers, which are the people who collect all of this data and are supposed to be keeping it, treat with your data. All right. Now, this is good news for you. This is a concern for companies and entities who have huge globs of data on you, because now they're going to be required to put things in place by law to ensure that your data is securely kept, right? It also ensures that at any time the data commissioner can audit an entity, regardless of what kind of entity it is. And it allows you and it gives you recourse if you feel that an entity that is in custody of your information is not, if you don't get the warm and fuzzy that they're dealing with it properly, you can complain and the data commissioner can then take action on your behalf. And I'll leave you with this, perhaps one of the more interesting provisions is the fact that you will be able to request opt-out of marketing efforts, where you get these messages on your phone or in your mailbox and you don't know how you get them. What we don't have now, and it's because there is no legislation, this will be dealt with, is the ability to require people who are sending you these things to allow you to opt out or to allow you to tell them, don't talk to me. So the legislation will address these and a number of other things. I mean, it's fairly comprehensive, and we kind of encourage you to participate in the discussion. There are going to be a number of joint select committee meetings on this, and by the way, a lot of the concerns people have about NIDS are addressed in that legislation. So, with all of the interesting stories going on about what NIDS is and will do, I can assure you that a huge amount of that is addressed in the data protection legislation that is coming. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'll be brief. Just 2 points.
Will you repeat the name?
Angela Biseso, CFMC. I just want to make a quick comment on the business continuity plan. About 20 years ago, I went to a security seminar, and one of the things I learned that had never left me was that criminals are very intelligent persons. They have a plan, and that is a problem where most of us get caught, in that we think these are lazy, don't care persons who want to just relax. They stay up day and night working their plan, and that is why, that's one thing I've learned in terms of that we all need to have a plan, that we are going to be attacked, so what will you do when you're attacked? Anyway, the other thing is I want to raise is, with the increased usage of online banking platform, many times I type in, say for example, I want to go to an NCB site, and I type in, and a different screen comes up, an unfamiliar screen. Now, because I'm conscious that something is wrong here, because I'm familiar with what the regular screen is, I come out and go back in. I have it like with Paymaster, Scotiabank, just about anything that you type it in and a different screen comes up. In the past, I've been told that you look at the HTTPS if it's secured, but then there is a way that I understand that they can actually coin that. So in terms that when you are suspicious about these sites that you get onto before typing, is it there because sometimes I know the banks change the page, the look, so I'm not quite sure. And what the problem I've had is that I'm not quite sure where to go in order to say report it or to confirm it, because sometimes when you even try to get access to the institution, it takes forever, and you have better things to do. And so that is something that I would ask that they, especially the online platform, the institutions that use the online platform, even be more, let the public be more aware of. And even with phishing emails, when I see these cute emails come in, and I'm just like, look at it, I'm just like, how many persons do really get caught? Because they sit down and they actually coin the wording, and if you're not, I got one recently from the FBI, and the FBI was telling me that persons has hacked into my data, and they're trying to protect me, and I need to do this and that, and I'm like, wow. But in terms of where to report, I think that is important. You had mentioned a site, Jamaica CERT, right? But until today, until just now, I would not have known about it, and I get a lot of stuff. So I would actually ask that it be promoted more, because a lot of persons do get caught in these. Thank you.
I guess in terms Not only the Jamaica CERT, but police cybercrimes is also there. So we're downtown, just across from the art gallery. So if there's an incident, you have been affected, of course your first line of report would be to the institution. Let's say you bank with NCB and something goes wrong with that transaction, then you report it to NCB, they'll take it from there. But the police is an option, the Jamaica CERT is another option.
And just to add to that, for everybody in the room who's not aware how to contact NCB, it's 1-888-NCB first. Very easy to remember, all right? And if you want to send an email, it's to info@jncb.com. I think what you're speaking to when you say you see site changes when you type the URL in or the address in that you want to visit, what you may see is if you do something incorrectly at your sign-in page to our internet banking facility, we use what we call a site picture as a part of protection to ensure that you're at the right place. So if you have typed something wrong, it's going to show you a picture that you're not used to. So until you see the picture that you're used to, you have keyed in the right information. In terms of the site though, every time that we change the look and feel of our site, what we call the UI, user interface, we actually give a lot of notice. We tell you it's coming starting as much as 90 days in advance, and we keep telling you that we're going to change our site, and we give you a little preview. So we're very aware that people are conscious of the fact that, you know, they could be visiting an incorrect site. So we inundate you with information about the change before it happens, because we're aware of it. So if you don't visit the site regularly, then you could probably miss something. And we also try to use the other forms of media, like, you know, traditional media like the newspapers and radio and TV, to just keep you posted and stuff like that. So we'll take it that we probably need to do a little bit more, and we will take that into consideration going forward, because change is, as you know, a necessary thing, and we will make more changes. All right? Yes, sir, go ahead.
Good day. Craig Smith, Massey Distribution. Two questions, really. The first is regarding the Data Protection Act. We know I can assume the applicability regarding the KYC requirements and the POCA for financial institutions. But in terms of scope of it, how will it affect other industries like distribution and other industries that has customers that where they collect information? Is there a current scope and a future scope, or what is the current status of it? That's the question, yeah. All right, the next question, or it's more of a comment, right? And it's just an observation, right? In our package, we got a nice little free thing. And in there was a USB drive from NCB.
Yes, right. Clean it.
Thank you very much.
Make sure you wipe
However,
is on it, NCB, but
we can probably ask ourselves how many of us will take it to our offices and just stick it in our computers.
Many of us will do it. And that's a good call.
All right, just a concern, but the main thing is the first question.
About the Trojan horse right there, right? Yeah. So as it relates to the scope, all right. So legislation is very broad, yeah, and that's just the nature of a lot of it. But any entity, whether it's a pharmacy or a multinational organization that collects data about citizens, because let me just be clear, this legislation is about protecting the citizens' data. So your PII as a Jamaican citizen, that's what that legislation is about. So any entity that collects information for whatever purpose, doing business or whatever, on citizens will now be classified as a data controller. And being a data controller, there are certain rules that you will have to follow under law. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you're manufacturing, industry, tech, financial, insurance, you sell nail polish or your fandangos. Yeah. As long as you collect information on citizens, you will be covered under that. I mean, look, there was a time some years ago where there was an individual, some of us may be aware of what I'm talking about, who used to have a lot of emails for people, and they actually used to sell that information to other entities and people so that they could communicate with you via email. Those kinds of individuals are covered under that legislation. It never existed before. So that's really the scope of this thing. Matters not. And that is why its effects are so far-reaching. So I think it is something that every business needs to be aware of and contemplate, because by law now you'll have some requirements that may impact your operations.
Afternoon, everyone. I don't want him to go too far, and I have a question for Cecil and Sandie as well. I, for one, comment. I'm excited about having our own data privacy legislation. But my question to you, and he has left. My question to you is, did we consider everybody May 24 know what's happening, right? GDPR. Countries that does business with the EU, they're now going to be required to follow a regulation, GDPR. So I'm just asking, did we consider those businesses here that does business with EU states in coining that legislation? And just a follow-up question for Sandie as well. I'm not so sure if GDPR applies to NCB, but what sort of preparation have we put in place for the rollout of the GDPR?
I didn't know I was going to be on the spot so much this morning, but that's okay. That's okay. All right. So as it relates to GDPR, which if you're not aware, this is European legislation. So that's their general data protection regulation. And what it stipulates is that if you are going to do business with anybody in the EU, there are certain rules you must now follow. Absolutely, yes. So if you are a Jamaican entity looking to do business with any business in Europe, and this affects the tourism industry quite a bit, or if you are collecting info on European citizens, there are rules you must now follow in the treatment of that data. All right, so in crafting just to answer your question, in crafting the data protection legislation for here, consideration and quite a bit was actually given to what is stipulated in GDPR. So there is some, it's not 100% for obvious reasons, but there is some harmonization between what is prescribed in our data protection legislation and what GDPR will require. Yeah, so, and by the way, GDPR comes into effect May 18th next year, 2018 or something like that. Yeah, you're right. So, so we hope actually, I think we're on target to do so, that our data protection legislation will be passed by then, so that we'd be in lockstep with GDPR, because we do a lot of business with Europe, and this is perhaps the only way that a country like us, who has nothing like Privacy Shield, which is negotiated between the US and the EU, to continue to do business in an increasingly digital world, without having the kind of concerns that European entities would have doing business with little old Jamaica. Yeah.
Okay, and from the perspective of a financial organization that handles customer data, we already have several regulations that guide us. FATCA, I mentioned AML, KYC earlier. There's PCI DSS compliance for credit card business, and we have passed, met, and been certified by all of these organizations because we have to comply. And the same thing is going to happen with GDPR. What it requires is that if we're holding data on people who reside in the EU, we must follow the guidelines of the general data protection regulation. So what at the stage that we're at now is just at the beginning, because we're scanning to see how many of those customers we have in our database, and we're also putting information together as to what those total requirements are going to be. So come May 25th, 2018, I can guarantee you that NCB will be 100% compliant as we are with everything else. All right?
Good day. Earl Dawkins, the name. Tell me something. Companies like Magna and companies who buy information, because in a sense, they collect the data from the counter and they reward you for it. Companies like Google, where you accept the fine print and, well, you can't read it. And some people say it include you accepting they're using it. I don't know NCB if do anything like that. That you yourself accept the sharing of the information. And what would you say about cameras in terms of data? Yeah, that would be as far as it goes.
Okay, so I think there are some of the questions that has to be answered from the perspective of the Act that I can answer, but let me quickly speak to 2 points. As I mentioned before, any data that you provide to NCB, NCB will comply with whatever regulations there are in terms of protection of that data. So Data Protection Act is new. It's being tabled sometime in January. I guess we'll hear some of the requirements that will come out for us to follow. But today, we follow what we call next practice. we don't only do this best practice. We look at what is happening globally. There are regulations, for example, that don't apply to us locally in Jamaica because they're, in some overseas country. Sarbanes-Oxley, Oakley, for example, we follow Sarbox because it's important in terms of how we deal with data, but it's not a regulatory thing. However, all of the regulations that are imposed on us, as I mentioned before, are followed. So any data that you provide to NCB, that agreement that you sign with NCB when you provide it to us, is going to be in compliance with all of the regulations that exist today. So your data, if we say in that agreement that we're not going to be sharing that data, and if there's a regulation that says we can't, your data will not be shared. So that's the best way to put it in summary. So your data is going to be okay as long as it does, because we have to be compliant, and we're very big on compliance. The next question about cameras in terms of data, I'm not sure what that question meant, but I want some clarification on that question. You just say, what do I think of data protection? I'm not sure. You want to be a little bit more specific? Yes, I know, but Yes.
All right. So just answer that part of the question. All right. So there are a number of forms that video information can take. All right. So one is, you know, at your home you have your closed circuit thing, and that then you have that at the workplace, both as security and monitoring. Then you also have traffic cameras for facial and license plate recognition and those kinds of things, right? So and video, as you rightfully say, is still considered data because it depends on what kind of information is gleaned from the video. So again, all of these, and this is why I said the legislation is very broad, because there are things that exist now that are covered, and there are things that will exist later that must be covered. And we have to do it in such a way that you don't keep rewriting legislation when something new comes up. So a lot of those kinds of things are covered in what is contemplated in this legislation. And again, it's not to say that, you know, we captured everything, but that is why we want public feedback and input, because the more that you have is the better the legislation is for you, because remember that legislation is about your data. All right, so did that answer? Yeah, okay.
Hello, I'm Christopher Chinshu, and what penalties will there be for breaches of individuals, companies, and institutions for protecting your data? The bill. What? For not protecting it. For not.
If I'm not mistaken, right? No, hold on. If I'm not mistaken, this session is Global Rise of Ransomware and How to Respond. How that drop in? How me reach us? How that drop in? Mr. Hopton, we need to talk about this. You know? We need to talk about this. I was not briefed that I would be doing this sort of thing. All right. So your question is about the fines. Penalties. Rama, yeah. So, and this was a topic of a lot of discussion when it was being reviewed. So, in a nutshell, there are two types of penalties. I have to talk to the legal people. They have the jargon for this, so I might not get it right. But you have civil and criminal. And with civil, there is a limit as to how much you can fine someone. And then criminal, there is a upper limit based on discretion of the judge and so on. Needless to say, that, and I will say this from the perspective of the minister, he was concerned and he was adamant that we make, given the nature of what we're talking about, which is citizens' data, that the fines ought to be as strict as possible based on the limits that we have. So there are situations where you have fines of as much as $5 million for certain types of breaches. And there are some that it's not even a fine; it's just straight jail time. Yeah. And again, they have. Again, there are prescribed limits, I don't know them off the top of my head, but there are prescribed limits, and they're based on what is presented, and they're at the discretion of the judge. But you have these upper limits and defined limits that are established in law outside of what we can do. So when we say, boy, we don't want to charge this man $1 million, so well, it doesn't rise to that level. So the maximum you can do is this.
What if
so
they sell the information for more than $1 million, like $10 million?
Right. So no, and I get you. No, because it's a legitimate concern, because if I'm getting more money for what I'm doing than what you're going to charge me, then But the idea is that depending on what it is that you do and what is established that you do, there is some discretionary room given to the judiciary to deal with that kind of thing. In order to fix those limits, because there are some limits where like, really, that's all you can charge, really? It is prescribed in other legislation, so we don't really have control over that as it pertains to the data protection bill. So what would have to happen is that they change that limit or restriction somewhere else, and then we can apply it. Which is why you can have reviews of legislation and so on, because and they're doing that right now, because there are some fines that are out there that make absolutely no sense. The lucky part of this legislation is that we're doing it now where we recognize there are fines out there that make no sense, so we appropriately, based on the limits, assign the fines and penalties for the breaches. Does that answer your question?
And it would be safe to the world, because if you're living in an oppressive state, it means that somebody could rescue you from that oppressive state. The same way we might say, no, in the context, Harriet Tubman would be called a human trafficker, but when we look at it, she was doing something against an unjust state.
Right, so, and just in case you didn't get the question, the question is, wouldn't it be better if the citizen could make their data public, which again, this legislation is the first legislation that says your data is yours, and what that means is you can treat with it how you want to. All right. It also dictates how other people who have it ought to treat with it. But there's nothing that will stop you from taking your data, which you haven't already given out to Facebook or Instagram or Amazon. There's nothing to stop you right now from doing that. So.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have gone past 1 o'clock, so we have time for one more question.
Yes, you're talking about the penalties. Is the penalty only restricted to fines, or is it fines on imprisonment, depending on? You said imprisonment. And okay, I'm thinking about the non-disclosure as it relates to persons' information. You were talking about companies and employees of companies. Is it also for disclosure for other individuals outside of the company, or who may have that information? Let's say an ex-employee or former employee. Non-disclosure of the information that you may gather. You are an employee of a company. You're no longer an employee, but you're able to share that information.
So, all right. So if I understand the question, for companies that have employees, and say an employee is in custody of some sensitive information, and then suddenly that employee no longer works for that company, they are still in custody of the information. How do you treat with that? All right, so that speaks to some of the things that entities will have to put in place so that one, employees understand their responsibility, one. Two, can be held responsible for certain acts while they work for you, and can also be held responsible for certain acts when they no longer work for you. And hopefully they'll get another job somewhere else that will require them to follow these particular rules, because you will be required by law to put things in place that ensure that you treat with people's data in a particular way. So that amounts to some of the baggage that businesses will now have to implement and contemplate if they are collecting people's data.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I'm charging for them now.
You're pointing in the wrong direction. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to say a big thank you to the panel for the very informative presentations that they did. I'd like to also thank you guys for the very, very well posed questions, and we hope that you have learned something from this session. As I said before, though, we have gone over time, and at this time I'm going to ask Professor Dunn to just we're going to send you an email. All right, over to you, Dr. Dunn.
Okay, very engaging session. Thank the panel and also Mr. Trevor Forrest for providing so much information at such short notice. No, but seriously, it is an issue that warrants a lot more discussion. And what I'm concluding from the interest and the questions coming up on this matter is that perhaps we will convene a public forum on the Data Protection Act and the provisions and ensure that we get the information that is necessary. Okay, so you can look out for that. I won't want to keep you much longer. We are just already a little beyond, well beyond lunchtime. As you know from the registration portal, lunch is served at this conference. It is the main venue for lunch is in the RHQ staff canteen downstairs, down the stairs and behind the stairs. That's where the canteen is. The serving will take place through the normal processes of queuing. Those who have special dietary requirements and have indicated this would indicate this also on arrival at the serving area. So once again, I want to thank everyone. Please come back for the session that follows. We are now scheduling that for 2 o'clock, and therefore lunch will be confined within a more limited space, but it is in the building, and we're asking you to come back right afterwards for the follow-up session. Thank you very much.